This is one of the trickiest waiver wire weeks of the entire season. We're dealing with a ton of injuries across multiple positions. And the frustrating part is we don't have clarity on most of them yet. So a lot of these pickups are going to feel like judgment calls rather than slam dunk priorities. But here's the good news. A few players actually gave us real information in week 11. We saw some meaningful role changes, not just random, spikes up and down. There were some players that did that. But there's a lot that we saw in week 11 that can help guide us going into week 12. There's a running back whose usage ramped up in a way that looks very intentional from his coaching staff. And, you weren't really comfortable starting him before, but now you will be. And there's a wide receiver who finally stepped into the exact role we've been waiting on all season long. And the craziest part is he didn't blow up on the stat sheet, so nobody's talking about him as much. But what he's been doing underneath the surface when he got his opportunities this year might make him one of the smartest pickups you can make for a late season run. And we'll get to him in a second, but let's get started with the top running back pickups going into week 12. First of all, check to see if Trey Benson is available. No idea whether he'll be back this week, but he has to be rostered. He's available in way too many leagues at this point. He has an amazing rest of season schedule. Amari DeMercado has a high ankle sprain, by the way, so we'll likely see a Bam Knight, Michael Carter backfield once again if Benson isn't back. These two are like the fallback running backs I'd want to pick up if I'm desperate at the position. But first, I want to pick up all these other guys that I mentioned here, starting with Emanuel Wilson. He should be available on most waiver wires. Josh Jacobs doesn't require surgery and doesn't have a serious knee injury, which is great news, but it's very possible he misses this week. So if you're picking up Wilson, keep in mind that this is likely a 1-week rental. The Packers are at home against Minnesota, not the best matchup in the world, but Wilson was on the field for 93% of snaps once Jacob left with his injury on Sunday, so he will be a solid RB2 if Jacobs misses regardless. Let's talk about Bhayshul Tuten. Honestly, I think he might be one of the better pickups right now. He tweaked his ankle in this game, but he talked to the media afterwards and said he's fine. So that makes me think that he could actually be okay. You never know. This could be a high ankle sprain, something more serious. We'll probably get more details soon, but for now, I'm looking at how the Jaguars were using him before the injury. It seemed like they came into this game with a very clear shift in mind. He and Etienne split snaps in the first half, 50-50 pretty much. Tuten actually had more carries, 8-6, and he was more productive. He even got the early goal line work as well, ended up scoring. That's the team trying to get him much more involved. He looked great out there. Several chunk plays. He's looked really good with his opportunities in this game and throughout the year. But if he ends up missing time, fine, ETN becomes a bell cow, right? That's great for people who have ETN, but we're talking about pickups here, right? If Tuten's healthy, that usage becomes super interesting, especially because the Jaguars have been feeding their running backs a ton lately. If you look at, across the league, no team has been using their running backs more than the Jaguars. Okay, so this kind of role, can matter down the stretch, even if this remains a split backfield. So I would pick up Tuten if he's still available. Now let's talk about Kenneth Gainwell real quick. It looked like Jaylen Warren just tweaked his ankle because Mike Tomlin came out today and said that he'll be limited to start the week. That's a great sign for him. But my issue is that Gainwell was pretty involved early in the game before Warren got hurt. And despite Warren playing well, he was being taken off the field way too much. It was really, really frustrating to watch, to be honest with you. Warren would have a big play, then he would come off the field. Why? So Gainwell was really involved in the passing game as well, mostly after Warren left the game. So I'd pick up Gainwell to see if a split continues. This backfield is getting a little frustrating, like I said, especially after it seemed like Warren was becoming the guy coming into the game. Let's talk about Sean Tucker. He absolutely went off last week. Hope you listened. You had him in your lineup. But two things to keep in mind. Bucky Irving might be back this week, and the matchup against the Rams is nothing like the matchup against the Bills this past Sunday. He's still very startable. If Bucky sits, I would imagine that he would continue to be the 1A in the run game, and he should still be picked up if he's on waivers. Let's see if Bucky plays. Hopefully he does. We'll see. Let's talk Devin Singletary. Both of these running backs in the Giants' backfield are being heavily utilized. Tyrone Tracy is the main back, but Singletary is still getting usage alongside him. They split snaps, they split carries, they split routes, pretty much 50-50. But the difference is that Singletary got all 4 goal line attempts in this game. He ended up scoring 2 touchdowns as a result. He's someone you can pick up and throw right into your flex this week. Chris Rodriguez led the Commanders' backfield against the Dolphins, so he'll have some value moving forward. Still a split backfield, so he'll need a higher share of the workload to really be considered for fantasy lineups, but he's a solid add this week. Just keep in mind that he's on bye, so you can't play him this week. Okay, now let's talk wide receiver pickups. Check to see if Alec Pierce is available. Tougher matchup this week against Kansas City, who primarily plays two high safeties, but he should be rostered regardless. Luther Burden. Okay, I really want to talk about Luther Burden here. Okay, he's somebody I'd be trying to pick up right now, and I might be a little aggressive, to be honest with you. Might not need to, though, and here's why. We've been waiting all season long for the Bears to finally put him on the field ahead of Olamide Zaccheaus, and it finally happened in this game on Sunday. He was their primary slot guy. He ran only 6 fewer routes than Rome Odunze. He earned targets on 23% of those routes as well. That already puts him in the conversation of him being in your lineup this week. And here's what I found when I looked even deeper. 123 receivers this year ran at least 100 routes. Burden ranked 9th among those 123 wide receivers in yards per route run. Okay, that is legit efficiency. And you look at all the names around him, those are all the big names that we know and love. Okay, so he actually has a bigger role now. So that efficiency isn't just, something that we're just throwing out there. Like, it points to potential real upside down the stretch. So he's the kind of guy who could suddenly pop if the usage keeps trending his way. Okay, so big name on the waiver wire for me this week. We continue to talk about Troy Franklin as well, so just check to see if he's available. But long story short, he's simply getting more targets than Courtland Sutton right now. Since week 17, Franklin is at a 27% target share compared to Sutton's 19%. Okay, just bonkers change of usage there. So, he's not available in a ton of leagues, but he is available in about 40% of leagues on Sleeper. Kayshon Boutte, he could be coming off of injury this week. We know the rapport that he has with Drake May. He has a really good rest of season schedule as well. Let's talk about Michael Wilson and his career day on Sunday. An insane 15 catches for 185 yards on 18 targets from Michael Wilson. You know what I'm saying? This never happened before, not even close. Jacoby Brissett passed for 452 yards in this game. Now, it's possible that Marvin Harrison Jr. misses another game, so I'd only start Wilson if he misses. So pick him up in case that happens. You'll have a one-week starter in a solid matchup against Jacksonville. We talked about Christian Watson potentially catching a touchdown over the top against the Giants' single high safety coverage, but he got 2. Instead, he sees a 2 high safety defense this week against Minnesota, so I will not love him going into this week, but he gets Detroit the week after, which is a much more solid matchup. Regardless, if you're not starting him this week, he should be rostered. Now, I would check to see if the 2 Tampa receivers are available, Tez Johnson and Chris Godwin. We just don't know how good Chris Godwin is at this point in terms of health. I would rather roster him over Tez Johnson, but both should be rostered. We just have to see how the situation plays out once Godwin is back, and he could be back as early as this week. Andrei Iosivas might end up getting a little bit more opportunity this week because Jamar Chase is being suspended for spitting on Jalen Ramsey. So Iosivas could step up here. He caught 3 for 20 last week, but caught 5 for 66 and a touchdown against the Bears before their bye. Should be a game where Joe Flacco will have to throw a lot against New England. Well, I guess any team, because any NFL team can score against this defense, so he'll have to throw against anybody, but Iosivas will be the next man up after T. Higgins. Very, very solid one-week streamer. Darnell Mooney. I don't know how much I trust Mooney moving forward, with Kirk Cousins, but it looks like Drake London will be out for a bit. 1 week is what we know he'll be out for, but these PCL injuries are always super tricky. We just might not see London as himself the rest of the way, which is so unfortunate, and I hate to say it. I hope that's not the case, but it could be true. Mooney would operate as the wide receiver 1 in his place, but Kyle Pitts will probably be very involved as well in a watered-down version of this offense. I'm going to talk about Adonai Mitchell, man. Even though he had a night to forget in his Jets debut on Thursday night, outside of the catch point, obviously, he looked great. Okay, he's not really known for someone who drops passes, so I'm not really worried that will continue with him. Could have just been the bright lights and a new team, all that kind of stuff. He was operating as the Jets wide receiver 1. He led them in targets. He was legit separating. And you guys know I'm a fan of AD Mitchell. As he was coming out of college, I think he has some great skill set. He has to put it all together, right? Now that Tyrod Taylor is starting, we could see some of that potential turn into real production. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. I hope you guys get who you want on waivers. Let's make those moves to get into the playoffs and win a championship. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.